let's talk about Total War on your own fans. Where does that get you? Bit of creative disassembly on this one. So, if you've been monitoring gaming or been a gamer for long enough, you've noticed a bit of a trend. And this trend is how basically you get these really good studios that come along, create these fantastic games, and then they get bought by corporate overlords and promptly run into the ground. There are many such examples. So I'm thinking of the first one that I was particularly aware of was a little studio called Bullfrog.
Oh
who
yeah,
produced Populous and Theme Park and
Dungeon
Syndicate.
Keeper.
Was that
Dungeon Keeper?
Yeah, well, and Dungeon Keeper. Yes.
In hospital.
I mean, they produce a lot of good stuff. They were acquired by EA in 1995, and they were shut by 2001.
Yeah.
Another one would be Maxis. Now they're still going. They created SimCity, and they have got Sims, which is doing all right. But SimCity has just been driven into the ground.
Yeah.
And was it Paradox? Is it they've taken over that one? Whoever it is that does Skylines. Westwood Studios, Command and Conquer.
Westwood used to be great.
EA bought them, closed shortly afterwards. Another one that goes.
This is like member berries.
Yeah, it is. But I'm going to couple more before I get to the meat and bones.
Remember when video games were fun?
Ensemble Studios, Age of Empires.
Yep.
Bought by Microsoft.
I remember.
Shut shortly after. Yes. Lionhead Studios, which was Black and White and Fable. Both of those are good. They were bought by Microsoft and closed shortly after. So we got some of this. Now, what I actually want to talk about is Creative Assembly, which was founded by Tim Ansell in 1987, and they produced the Total War games. So I think we've got some footage to show you of Total War, warring. Let's play that in the background while I tell you about some of their games. So I'll whiz through these because there's some classics on here. Right. In 2000, they produced Shotgun, Total War, Shogun. Yes, Shotgun would be good, actually. Right, Medieval Total War in 2002. Right, let me tell you about
Medieval 2.
Medieval 1, sorry, in 2000.
Right.
Medieval 1 in 2002.
Right.
Yeah. Now, that game, right, now, I discovered this game shortly before I was about to go to Edinburgh with an FHM cover model, literally an FHM cover in South Africa. But I was going to go and spend 2 weeks there, and I was seriously considering blowing it off because I just discovered Medieval Total War, and I was so enraptured by this game.
Yeah.
Right, a couple of years later, Rome Total War, and then in 2005, Sega buys Creative Assemblies. Right, and you still got some good ones after that. Medieval 2, Empire, Napoleon, Shogun 2, Rome 2. I never quite got into Rome.
Well, it all goes downhill after Rome 2.
Yeah. Yes, you're right, actually.
Medieval 2 was...
Oh, Medieval 2 is amazing.
I think it's after that.
They did Alien Isolation. So they did weirdly do... I mean, it's not a first-person shooter, but it's like a horror-type thing. So weirdly, they broke out and did that. So I don't quite get that. But Warhammer, I actually quite like Warhammer. It was an interesting departure. Right, Three Kingdoms, which was their best game. So that's had almost 200,000 concurrent people playing on it. I think that one sort of pandered a bit more to the Chinese market.
Yeah, I was going to say, how many of them are from the People's Republic?
Yeah, and then I had to skip a whole load because they were just like stupid like bolt-on things sold as their own game. But Troy kind of was a flop, and then Pharaoh, which was a massive flop. Yeah, the only person I've ever found who likes Pharaoh is Josh in our office, because basically the whole purpose of the game is to wait for immigrants to turn up and then slaughter them.
The sea people, as they're known in history.
Yes. So, but anyway, so Three Kingdoms peaked at 200,000 concurrent players on Steam, and Pharaoh is now down to 5,000. That's the most number of people it's ever had playing at once.
Yeah,
5,000.
And it doesn't have that on an average day.
Yes, it's not good. Now, apparently, Sega came down from on high and basically wanted. There was this game apparently called Fortnite that did really well.
Yep.
And Sega decided we want one of those as well. So we're going to get our real-time strategy people to
make a first-person shooter.
Yes. So they dumped 100 million in something called Hyenas. Now let's go to the next link because we've got. There we go. Yep. Right, now go down a bit, and there's a trailer thing. Let's play that with no sound, so you can get. So they didn't finish the game. They basically scrapped it after the beta. People saw it and was like, no, kill this immediately.
Hyenas.
Hyenas.
Yes. Now you'll notice from this trailer that it's ticking all the corporate boxes.
That's very diverse, isn't it?
Well, so it's got lots of diversity.
We've stolen the art style.
You'll see in a moment. It's got lots of alphabet people. It's got what else? Oh yeah, it's got a hot girl boss basically leading this special forces team, because obviously all special forces team need a 20-something model to lead from the front. And you'll notice it does actually have some white men,
right?
Whose entire purpose is to get shot,
right? Yeah.
Because they're the guards and stuff, like in Austin Powers and stuff. Anyway, so they dumped 100 million on this. And then when people actually got to
this
beta
was
test
100 million.
Yes, well, I've heard mixed reports. So I think they allocated 100 million and they spent at least 70 of it, or something like that.
Can I just be clear? The art style here is disgusting.
Yes,
it's genuinely vile to look at.
Yes,
it looks dirty,
but I mean, it does tick all the corporate boxes, and it's got the diversity and stuff. So anyway, they spent a huge amount of money on that, and and basically, as soon as players saw it, they were like, "No, kill this immediately."
Yeah,
and they kind of they dropped that. So apparently Sega had high hopes for the game. It was supposed to be a super FPS, but basically they dropped it, and then they had to start canning staff.
Yes.
So now 40% of their real-time strategy team has been binned.
Yeah,
which is
we could have had World War I Total War.
Yes. Oh, let me press the next.
Hi folks, we've rolled out a new feature on the website, which is the ability to pay for an individual piece of content. So usually it's £5 a month every month to subscribe to all of the content on the website. But I appreciate there are going to be people who simply don't want to do that. They would be interested instead in purchasing a single piece of content for a lower amount, and they've got a particular niche that they're interested in watching. And so they don't want every single piece of content. They just want this one thing. So we've introduced this function where you can just simply purchase the one thing for £1.89, which I think is about $2.30 at the current exchange rates. And then that's just yours forever. So there's no sort of commitment there. There's no rolling subscription. It's just that one thing. So that's an option now that's on the website. It's completely live. It's completely available. And please go and enjoy it. And we'll see you all very soon.
Yeah. I know you don't like the more modern Total Wars, but I love the guns.
I'm not going to be angry that they made it. I'll just be like, that's just not for me. I'll carry on playing Medieval.
Yeah.
Rome,
I love the historical stuff as well.
Yeah, it's fine.
But instead we got hyenas.
I just want them to make games that are good. That's all I want. Even if that, like a lot of people like Napoleon, I didn't enjoy it that much. So it's just like, okay, fair enough. That's fine. I'm not jealous about it or something. I just want them to be decent.
Well, so, I mean, that wasn't the only blunder that they made, because they've been up, because as you're alluding to, which I think you can get into the main part of our chat, is they kind of been dunking on the fans for a while. So basically what seems to have happened, and I read a whole load of stuff on this, is it appeared they realised that the fan base for historical real-time strategy capped out at something like 5 million users, something like that.
Yeah.
And they decided, well, if we can't grow it, we need to increase
milk it.
Milk, yes. So we need to increase.
It's not enough to just make money.
We need to increase the revenue per user while simultaneously lowering the spend per user.
Yeah.
So basically, more money for old rope was basically their strategy.
Yeah, Creative Assembly have adopted just the worst business model I can possibly imagine.
Yes. This is why I really hate corporate people.
Yeah.
Because you're just to come at a place that's working, makes money, and makes a great piece of art every year. To come in and be like, yeah, what if we made it so you're selling Pepsi, essentially? You don't understand the space, is what I get out of people.
But it's not just that, because they could have made good, consistent money from this forever.
Yeah.
But instead, it's like, no, there has to be like a 12% growth every year.
Yeah.
And the only way they can get that in the short term is by cannibalizing the long-term value.
Yes.
By
That's
pissing
exactly
on
what's
people.
happened.
Yeah.
Like just burning up the goodwill that the existing fan base has.
Yeah.
Because one of the problems with Creative Assembly, which is not unique to Creative Assembly, but really, really stands out in this particular space, is DLC. Right? There's the constant, here's 20 quid for like 3 extra factions or something in your game. It's like, listen, I can unlock them using mods. Why would I pay for this? But also, like, for the Warhammer Total War one, they released like 12 DLCs for it, and it's just like, look, this is just ridiculous, and it makes me think you are just cynically trying to rinse me at this.
So I looked
not
at
having it.
So the Warhammer 3 game cost 50 quid, and then to buy the whole game with all the DLC is an extra £210.
Jesus Christ!
The thing is,
this comes from Paradox Games. Do you guys play Paradox Games?
Occasionally, yeah.
So they're like, their model is that we release, say, Hearts of Iron 4. It's a real-time game about World War II where you play at a country level, and it's good. It works. It functions. and then we release a DLC every 3 months that costs 10, 15 quid. And so the game is now like, I don't know, 5 years old, 7 years old. There's a lot of DLCs. So if you were to buy it now, yeah, you'd be getting ripped off and spending £500. But if you play along with it, it's fine. But Total War doesn't do that. Total War is just like, here's a whole bunch of stuff that we cut from the game.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, that's a key distinction. So I didn't mind the DLC in the Warhammer 1 because it was like each DLC was like a proper extension to the game, and it was fine. It's like I'm perfectly happy to pay that. But it's exactly like you say. Increasingly, what happens it's the same with The Sims as well. Basically, the core game gets trimmed down to such a bare bones, and then you basically do have to buy the extra things because otherwise the game's not particularly functional. And I'm going to give you an example. So the latest DLC that came out was it Shadow something bloody? Oh, here we go. Shadows of Change, right? And it was 20 quid. So it was priced the same as a race pack, but it basically just had a couple of characters in it, a couple of lords, and it has overwhelmingly negative reviews on Steam. I mean, I've never seen overwhelmingly negative on Steam. You have to be going some to get overwhelmingly negative.
You have to really have aroused the ire of the fan base. But the thing is, like Creative Assembly, what they're doing is they're trying to repackage essentially, like they had these Sagas titles, which were like mini versions of the Total War games that were never very popular. So it's like, okay, if they're not very popular, why are you doing them? But it's because they can just, I mean, literally, this is the thing with Pharaoh. Like Troy was a sort of like a mini side title where it's like, okay, and I played Troy, it was okay, I didn't hate it. There were loads of DLCs for it that I didn't buy for it, of course, because why would I? But then it's like, okay, we're just going to repackage that as Pharaoh, and we're going to package this as a major Total War release, and yet,
but it's an add-on.
It's essentially just a reskin of Troy, which is just a kind of add-on side thing. And so what they're actually doing is just producing less and less and less, and the price is still going up. And wondering why people are annoyed, because the actual gameplay itself isn't terrible, but the game itself actually is still fairly functional. It works, like it's enjoyable enough. I know these are low
What a ringing endorsement. Man, you really got to check out this game company. They're functional games.
It's
but it's not actually functional though, is it? Because when I asked you about this before, you were just telling me about all the bugs and the clipping.
Well, that was Rome 2 in particular.
But you never would have said this when you were playing Rome Total War. You never would have been like, well, it's functional.
No, I would have been like,
it's awesome. You can manage a whole Roman Empire.
But well, exactly, that's the point, right? What they've done is kind of got addicted to this sort of like fast hit of cash injection from producing every few months a crappy little DLC or a small side title, rather than actually being like, right, okay, we are going to just make the entire thing new, and this is going to get us millions of sales. That's what they're failing.
You don't mind the DLC if it was like a genuinely thought through, a real addition to it, but it just feels like it's just like, okay, 2 months has elapsed, it's time for something, and we've thrown this out.
You can now buy blood. I mean, that's one of the DLCs.
Yeah,
in which they add blood to when the guys stab each other. It's like, you clearly cut that out and now charging me £3.
Right. Anyway, so the fans noticed that this was going on and they weren't particularly happy about it. So they started grumbling on the forums about it. Now,
Creative Assembly's response to this has been,
well, that was quite good. They came out with a blog post and it ended with the infamous line, the right to discuss is a privilege, not an entitlement you earn by playing the game.
That's really interesting as well. That ties into their attitude towards fans complaining about the amount of money things are costing as well. Because the director of that just came out and said, yeah, that's how much it costs, deal with it. It's like, right. So that's Creative Assembly's opinion. You don't get to talk about it and just pay up, chump.
Yes.
How many, I don't know if you have looked into this, but how many of the original people who made things like Rome Total War are still there?
Oh, I'm coming.
They must be gone.
So I don't have absolute numbers, but there has been a lot of staff turnover more recently. I mean, obviously, when they let go 40% of the workforce after spunking it all off on that hyenas thing, with the alphabet people, they lost a lot of them, but a lot of other people have been going as well. Anyway, so then people started review bombing all of their games, and one of the reviews that was quite common was people saying basically something along the line, and I'm paraphrasing here because everybody had their own way of saying it, but they would repeat the right to discuss is a privilege, not an entitlement you earn by playing the game. And people would be coming back with something like, the right to a positive review is a privilege, it's not an entitlement by making a game, which is quite good. Right.
Love that.
So how did Creative Assemblies respond to getting arsey with people who were criticizing them.
Well, I assume they just banned them.
Yes, they turned from Warhammer to Banhammer.
Yes.
And they just started banning people all over the place.
And Games Workshop is terrible for this as well. So they're in bed with another company. It's like, yeah, F the fans, actually.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it's a real problem here because they were so heavy with the Banhammer, they were banning people who made really popular mod series. And that meant that they could no longer post updates. So next time there's a patch, the mod doesn't work,
and so
no update can be released. So they were basically just wiping out mods all over the place and just destroying the
So I know a bit about this because I follow a bunch of like Creative Assembly Total War YouTubers, and basically Creative Assembly have this kind of partner program.
Oh yes,
they deal with YouTubers who are going to give them nothing but glowing praise, and as soon as that person, and they'll bring them to like release events and stuff like that, they'll wine them and dine them. But as soon as that reviewer, that YouTuber says something even slightly negative, that's it, they're out, right? And so you are not allowed to be vaguely critical. It literally like North Korean levels of unfettered praise, or else that's
so it's not a partner program, it's a sycophant program.
Yes. And these people get like an early release. So they, on day one, they've got their video of it out. So they get the hits and stuff like that on YouTube. But that means that they're essentially doing free marketing for Creative Assembly. And if they are even vaguely, slightly critical, that's it, that's gone. And so that's just like, wow, that's a really abusive method of running like your outreach.
Incompetent.
Well, it's totally incompetent, but it's a really abusive way of having outreach to the fan community.
Sure, but even if you're a cynical bastard who only cares about money, that's the worst thing you can actually do. Like, if you want to be successful in professional life, you have to be able to deal with criticism.
Yes,
because that's how progress is made.
Yes.
Like Paradox has a similar thing, but they do let the people who they sponsor talk about how bad some of their games are, because they are bad and need fixing.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
well, Creative Assembly are not like that. And the thing is, the sort of online Total War commentary community has very much become aware of this. And then you get people in Creative Assembly who start leaking to these YouTubers. And so I've watched a bunch of videos saying, well, I spoke to this guy in Creative Assembly. And basically, like, the DLC team began at like 4 people to create DLCs. And then blew to like 80 people. So it's like the home office, basically.
Yeah.
You'll see you go, brrr.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. And so they're trapped on this treadmill with a huge number of staff creating content that nobody really wants, and they're unable to sort of walk that back, and they're burning up all of the future goodwill for the next Total War game. And so when they say, hey, we've got a big Total War, look at this, Pharaoh Total War, everyone's like, we don't care, we're not interested.
Well, I can put stats around that because this is, the number of players.
Yeah.
And so Warhammer's up there. So these are Steam. So you can see how many people are actually playing at the moment, and the 30-day average.
Yeah.
Yeah, people should be at work. But yeah, so Warhammer 3's holding up, 3 Kingdoms holding up, Rome 2 is on there. Medieval, I mean, that's an old game, and that's still...
Yeah, Medieval 2 is like 15 years old, and it's still got more than Shogun and Total War 2.
Shogun's doing well, but look at the more recent games. I mean, Attila, Napoleon, Pharaoh. There are only 315 people at the moment playing Pharaoh.
There are twice as many playing the original Total War, not even remastered.
Oh, yeah. Like just the original Total War. So they've literally burned up any goodwill.
I didn't even know Britannia existed.
Troy. And you just
one person playing Kingdom.
Yeah. If that's you, comment.
Yeah. But like, how do you take such a massive and successful franchise and screw it up? Well, you do what Creative Assembly has done.
Yes.
So that's what you
make it cool. Well, actually, I mean, I do have some further depth on that.
Just a quick thing as well. Right?
Yes.
It's like Creative Assembly basically had the entire market of real-time tactical strategy games.
Yes.
Yeah, what's that competition?
Exactly. Like I just want to line up rows of men and engage in an ancient or medieval battle. Like, and there's only one franchise that does this for some reason. I don't know why no one else has just made.
Oh, for me, it was the ability to invade France.
Well, but there are lots of games.
I don't play a game unless it has the ability to invade France, because that's always been an ambition of mine.
But the thing I love about the Total War games is that literally you can construct your army, you hire the units, and then you have them on a battle, you fight someone else, and you have to use tactics in order to defeat them. That's the fun of it, right?
Okay.
Why no one else has made a game that does this, I don't know. Why is it literally just creative assembly?
I reckon there's some mid-level executive at Paradox who's got his business case ready to go, and he keeps taking it to the board, and they're like, "Well, just wait a little bit longer for these guys to shoot themselves in the face entirely, and then we move in."
Well, it's the reason I choose creative assembly games over Paradox games. It's Paradox games. There's basically no tactics.
It's the battles thing.
Exactly, it's the battles. And so that's the only reason. It's not like Paradox games are bad or anything. Just don't do the things that creative assembly wants to do.
Yeah. Well, I've got some further details on how it went really wrong. So first of all, DLC, and you mentioned this. Their DLC team went from 4 people to 80. So it is now a primary focus of the business, just to churn out. So you're not getting DLC based on what's good and what's necessary. Technical debt, that came up a lot. So this is basically referring to the Warscape engine that they've had running since 2007, which they did I think Empire on, and then every game after that forks off the previous game.
Yeah.
And then basically what happens is whenever they run into a problem, they kind of bodge it in the moment. They never fold it back into the original engine of the game.
Yeah.
So you basically just got these problems that are scaling up,
persistent.
Yes. Yeah. And it's just becoming more and more of a rickety scaffolding, basically getting to this point.
Yeah.
Another one, lack of documentation, which might sound a bit boring, but
when you've got high turnover of staff and you've got insanely complicated games like the Total War games, and you go, right, good luck figuring out how this works.
Yeah. Yes, quite. So I don't claim to be any sort of great expert on making video games, but I have in my VC career bought and sold video games companies, and the first thing that I've always insisted on whenever I bought something is get your documentation in order, because that way you can't be held to ransom by any one employee, or something happens, you can basically churn. And it's particularly an issue here because they're firing people, their good people are leaving because of all of this, and then new people are coming in and working incredibly inefficiently for months until they figure out all the weird workarounds that this company requires. Bad tools. So because they're using this sort of in-house engine and everything's been bodged together, they don't have any sort of decent tools. So they've been creating their tools in XML and then integrating it on a piece of software, an internal software called Dave. So basically error checking is horrendous, leading to even if faults are found, quite often that it's very finicky how you flag them. So these errors basically turn silent. And then the first you discover about them is when they come up on the Steam forums.
Imagine if they'd used that 70 million to just overhaul all of this and produce a really big, impressive Total War game.
Yeah, or get their engine fixed.
Yeah,
and then
just to rehaul everything.
Yes.
Completely redo.
Complete rehaul. So, I mean, there was one guy who was sort of a bit of a whistleblower from them, and he said he changed companies. He found that error checking went from a 2-hour process to a 2-minute process when he moved companies.
Yeah.
Which is not good. Apparently they got little to no QA, so quality assurance basically just isn't happening. So bugs aren't being found.
That's the player base.
That's literally it.
That's literally their philosophy.
Yes.
Let the players fix it.
And leadership, apparently the leadership are just burying their heads in the sand because they feel it's too difficult to.
Well, it's a pretty mammoth task, but literally what they should do is, and I don't even think this is necessarily Sega pressuring them either. Actually, it seems to be from, like, I watched a bunch of videos about the leaks and stuff like that. It seems to all be all internal and all in their own heads. And basically what they need to do is be like, right, okay, we're just brand new game, Rome 3, right? Brand new engine, like you use like Unreal 5 or whatever.
Yes.
Right? So you've got the latest graphics engine, create a new...
And you've got so many new staff, it doesn't matter that you're changing engine.
Exactly, no. Yeah. But it's all going to be new. You've got to figure all this out. Create a new engine, create new tools in the back end that you could release to the modding community afterwards. So they can continue to make your games good after you've
working with the audience, so you can keep them and build them,
and just start a total afresh. And you could create a brilliant Total War game that would actually save your company.
Yes,
if you want to take.
I do sort of blame Saga, because I think what's happening is Sega, because the holiday company for the over 50s, isn't it? Yeah,
well, it does when it's a word that I'm used to.
So I do sort of blame Sega, because I think what they've done is they've basically penciled in that they want so much hundreds of millions from this every quarter or whatever it is, and if they don't get it, then they're saying to the people who manage creative assemblies, you're going to get the boot if you don't deliver us this quarterly growth, and so it has to go short term. Revenue maximization and destroying the long-term value in the process. That's what they're doing. So what Sega need to do is they need to write down their expectation by at least half, if not 100% and do what you said. Bring in the Unreal Engine.
Yeah.
Just use that instead.
It's whichever new one is fancy at the
and produce a new epic historical title, and whether it's Medieval 2 or the World Wars. Right?
Well, they've got loads of options. They just don't like Pharaoh should have been just Bronze Age Total War. Right? That could have been epic, like big, expansive map. But also, what they need to do, and I don't know why they don't do this, is create like unique mechanics for each faction. Right? Yeah, I realize that's going to be a little bit of a pain.
Yeah. That's where the game becomes replayable.
Exactly. That's why it's interesting. Like literally like the Crusade mechanic from Medieval 2. Like that was actually fun.
Or the Romans not working like the Egyptians, because why would they? And it means when I play the Egyptians, I'm not instantly bored.
Yeah, exactly. I don't feel like I'm playing an inferior version of the Romans.
And you could make it, if it was epic and new and breaking boundaries in terms of the engine and stuff like that, you could have, say, Medieval 3, and you could say, okay, well, on release, it's just going to be Europe. And then a year later, we
here's Africa, here's the Middle East.
Yeah, exactly. And if it was World Wars, you could say, okay, we're going to start with Europe, and then we're going to include Russia, and then we're going to include North Africa, and then we're going to include the Pacific, and maybe even South America right at the end of the war. It's that one little village in Argentina or whatever it is. If you wanted to be really spicy, you could do an add-on pack for the formation of Israel just after the war.
That would be such a good game, though. I would play the hell out of that.
There'd be a huge amount of content produced.
Israel Total War. I mean, that would be so good.
But that should be a part of Bronze Age Total War as well. Because that's literally when Israel is first formed.
Oh, no, I'm thinking, I don't mind. All right.
Anyways. I know what you're thinking.
Probably don't. Anyway. But this is fixable. But I think what's going to happen is Sega are going to stick to their guns, and they're going to drive this one utterly into the ground. And I'm sad because I quite like these games.
Oh, I love these games. It's heartbreaking this happened. The reason I know so much about this is because I love these games. But they're never going to do any of the things they actually need to do to fix it.
Yes.
And so, I mean, like, it doesn't even have to be a faction by faction unique mechanic. It just has to be a culture by culture unique mechanic. So any Gallic culture could do X, any Germanic culture could do Y, any North African culture, just something different. Give me a replay.
And just a bit of passion for the game rather than how we're going to increase by 12% this quarter.
Yeah, exactly. That's just not you. The reason you got to where you are is by making a good game. Worry about that.
And there are 5 or 6 million people who love you.
Game company?
Yeah. You remember?
Yeah.
If you appreciated that segment from the podcast of the Lotus Eaters, you can go to lotuseaters.com to get access to all the premium content that's on the site, such as the Epoch series, this episode on the Anglo-Zulu War. And if you'd like to find out what else is being put out, you can follow Lotus Eaters on Twitter at lotuseaters_com on Twitter. Thank you and goodbye.